All right. I hope this will be a good sound and everything because I'm going straight live from my webcam on my PC. So, um, reason number one to go live is because I have a slow upload speed. So instead of uploading a long video, this is much better. And also, everyone can see that I'm not really editing anything. I just want to remain genuine and honest the way my channel is also titled. Um, I don't know. The the first thing to begin with when you end up in a toxic relationship or you realize that you were in one, I would say is try and figure out your own toxicity. At least that's what took me quite a while. Well, it's really, if anyone's watching, please let me know if the sounds good. Um, but yeah, so I've realized in my own ways where, how, and why I was toxic myself, or in some moments I can still be toxic. But that also know that all of us can be toxic one way or another. Um, best what we can do is to acknowledge those things and learn to pause in these emotions, because you can't control them, you can't suppress them, you can't always change everything over a night. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of self-reflection. But let's say if you feel like you're getting angry at something or someone, try to take a deep breath, count to at least 10 or 20. But I've found a recommendation that it's best to try and hold off for 90 seconds and then see if you still what you wanted to say is still really the things are still really the things you wanted to say. And yeah, I must say that works. So my triggers basically come from the PTSD, which I have from the childhood. Um, I wouldn't say I'm really suffering from this, but one has to learn a lot to live with it, learn a lot about yourself, and how to deal with the situations that get you triggered. Um, so, yeah, I'll speak about my childhood and other details in great detail in other videos, and later on it's going to be more like series and episodes of all this because, even though I feel that I'm relatively young, I'm 41, and I've lived quite an eventful life. And whenever I try to remember things, I see that there's a lot. So now, focusing on the relationship that I was in for the past 8, almost 9 years. Um, as much as it was difficult and painful for the most part, unfortunately, there's a lot of good things. Of course, there's a lot of very good memories, good feelings, um, exciting moments, and travels and stuff like that. There's lots of good stuff. Um, but unfortunately, sometimes these things do get overshadowed by the pain we can cause to each other. And that's the reason why I'm talking about it, because a lot of people, and I think particularly men, don't open up enough about these subjects, especially when, you know, we get to be the victims as well. So it's not like, you know, um, in my case as well. In 2015, I got charged because I hit the woman I believed I loved, and I do deeply regret that moment. It was one of my biggest, no, not one of my biggest, but it was the biggest mistake in my life. Um, it definitely made me realize that I did not have my reactions to my own emotions, so much under control as I believed I did. Um, And the best part of it is like that I know now that regardless of how broken people are and what's wrong with them, most of us are actually aware of what we're doing at that time, but not really knowledgeable enough, not experienced enough to know what is best to do. Or even if we do think about it, like in my case, I will say when I had the first few triggers, I understood that the best thing to do is try and talk about it respectfully and calm and see where things go from there. But when things start to repeat and they evidently become a choice of the other person to remain toxic, um, what I thought was a form of self-defense, and I'm not talking about physical stuff, I'm talking about verbal abuse. What I thought was a form of self-defense, like raising your voice, um, you know, just being toxic back at another, that it was a valid response because these were the things unfortunately I got used to in my childhood, the culture from the country where I come from, the environment, and basically most of my life I was surrounded by bullies and manipulative people who didn't have really good intentions. So having been hurt before, cheated by a girlfriend, divorced before, but the first divorce wasn't really painful. It was just an issue of incompatibility and the lack of communication both from both sides. But through through the years, I became more walled up, more defensive, in a sense that, let's say, professionally in the jobs or in normal environments or everyday in day-to-day environment, I would definitely be more self-disciplined, self-controlled, and really behaving at my best. However, like I think all of us, when you're at home, you're relaxed, you feel safe. And honestly, the way I see from following quite a few really good psychologists around social media, and the way I see what they say is at home you should feel safe. And being safe also means that you have to be allowed to be vulnerable, which means you are allowed to, talk about um, your insecurities, talk about yourself, talk about your past, and not feel um, bad about it in any kind of way. That's really important in any relationship to begin with. Let's say I remember I the best relationship I had in my life with someone was was actually my cousin. Me and him, he never had a fight. Like, I mean, when you would call a fight, there was no real big disagreements, and we are super different. We're, he's I think around 5 years older than me. We're born about a week apart in terms of the birth dates, but yeah, we just really had this amazing relationship where we would totally accept each other without any judgment and without any questions. And I know I've done some things, or let's say I had a lifestyle that was very upsetting for my grandma and my relatives and my family in general, like punk rock, squatting. um, Apart from this image right now, I had a long mohawk. It wasn't really nice for them, I get it, like they just couldn't approve that stuff. But he was the kind of guy who, didn't really care about any of that. He still saw me for who I am. And yeah, in that sense, I really appreciated that relationship I had with him. Um, because on the other hand, I also lived with the kind of people who were very judgmental towards my personality, my issues, and my vulnerabilities. So bullies can be everywhere and loads of them, so it's hard to deal with that. Okay, so now back from that, the relationship with my partner and how it all began and how I became really toxic with it. Um, when I met this gorgeous woman, I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, it was not just about the beauty because that's not really important for me. I mean, beauty comes from within, but this was honestly the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen. So um, from that first moment, it was also something about that vibe, the energy, just something couldn't. I was, I guess, I was in love at first sight, um, or in love, at least, extremely attracted to this person. And yeah, um, as some time went by, we became friends. We started seeing each other. We became intimate. And then after a while, we decided, well, I had to find a new flat. Um, and yeah, since I wasn't so keen on having housemates and sharing a flat with people that I don't know, obviously I offered her to move in with me. That at that point we were in a totally uncommitted relationship. Um, I offered her to share, I think, about 1/4 of my rent and expenses. And yeah, of course, you know, having already known that I'm kind of falling in love, I also said that there's only one condition that she allows me to say that I tell her every day that I love her. um, so yeah, it all started off really nice. I mean, she was from the beginning really charming, listening a lot, maybe also listening more because honestly she couldn't speak English very fluently. Which, although she learned it really fast, which impressed me a lot. I mean, her personality, intelligence, personality on the surface, intelligence, everything was just amazing. I mean, I felt like the luckiest guy on the planet, of course. Um, but not shortly after she moved in, the first red flags started appearing. So one thing that bothered her a lot, or one some of the things that bothered her a lot were um, eating habits. Like personally, I really support vegans. I tried going vegan more than once myself. It was just mainly because of my lifestyle that wasn't so stable and fundamentally sorted yet. I was not really um, doing well with vegan diet. And then smoking. Yeah, I'm still a smoker. I do try my best. I mean, I don't smoke a lot anymore, but back then I used to smoke about a pack of cigarettes a day. I drank also quite a bit. Let's say it would be like sometimes a couple of beers, sometimes 4 to 5 beers. It depends, but yeah, I really like beer. So um, although for the past more than a week I haven't drank a single drop of alcohol at all, and I don't think I will. But regardless, so these things were kind of like parts of these small arguments, but they were appearing already regularly. So, having spent most of my time in a very loud, noisy, toxic environment, my reactions to arguments, to these kind of things can't go really well for a long time. So, when there's pressure mounting up, I don't react to it really well. Um, but yeah, I mean, the fact that I was also used to all that made me feel like that I have to keep moving my boundaries, that I have to keep accepting more and be more sensible and reasonable. After all, I understood, we all have issues, we all have problems from our childhood. I wanted to understand her better. I wanted to know more about her and her past and all of these things because I understood, even the way she socialized with others until she met me was quite, let's say, reckless, in my opinion. And I hope to be a humble one here. It was quite reckless and self-destructive. Definitely lacked some self-respect for a woman. Um, but yeah, I honestly wanted to be that. Well, I am that genuine guy who doesn't use people because they are weak and because they are vulnerable. So yeah, the things I did were out of love. Even the anger, even the reactions and arguments were still out of love because what affected my anger in this relationship in particular, as I found out very late, was the fact that I had a very similar relationship with my mother. So the lack of accountability, this egocentric behavior where everything was around her and her pain and her own emotions more than the reality, the facts that I don't know. Sometimes you have to push through, work a bit harder, be disciplined, and all of this kind of stuff. So yeah, among other disagreements that we had with my now ex-partner was also this. So I manifested really good success in my life. I already knew what it means to get somewhere, to do stuff that you couldn't even wildly imagine before, but you still did, like you still did them, like skydiving, traveling to Africa, all of these kind of things. I mean, I was born in a poor family, so having achieved those things was really a lot, right? And she she is one of the people, or was one of the people, who did really tend to believe that stuff must actually come easy. And that was for me, like, just given through the experience what I have about the reality of, let's say, the so-called law of attraction and manifesting, and then how this act, what the process is behind all this. Because you can get anything you really wish for, that's undeniably true, but it doesn't go without taking action and without being disciplined, without really believing in yourself too. And I knew that all of this is also combined with consistency, hard work, dedication. But we had often disagreements even about those things. Like, it's, let's say, if I say that something pisses me off, what often pisses me off when people have a very strong opinion, which turns out through exploring with them in a discussion that they don't necessarily have enough of experience yet, that they need more. So if I'm argumentative, I'm usually because I speak not only for myself, but I speak on behalf of loads of wise people who have basically been teaching us the same. But the best lessons, of course, you can get is through your own experience. And I do tend to have a lot. So yeah, my, let's say, this was my tendency to be validated and also to be right, maybe too often. So this was my problem here. But yeah, ultimately, what this meant, it wasn't so much about that we would be so fundamentally different, because honestly, in terms of the belief system, how we would raise the children, how we see the world, how we see the society, and all of other things. I mean, we were so similar, so like on a level of best friends otherwise. However, when it comes to the relationship in itself, being partners, this is where everything was going fundamentally wrong from the start. And the ultimate lesson for me and what I learned from this was that it was me who allowed all of that. It doesn't matter what other people do to you when you're an adult already and you do hold the cards. Like in my case, for example, I was the one who was on the contract of the apartment. I was the one paying for everything at that point because her contributions stopped quite quickly. So at the end of the day, I was still the master of the house, so to speak. So I had the power of decision making who and what will happen next. But I was the one who lost that power through reactions that were fueled with anger and quite a bit of alcohol at that point. So after that, I lost that leverage of mine. It was because of the feeling of guilt and all of that, and especially the feeling of guilt of hitting and being aggressive with a person who's already been through a lot. Having been hurt and beaten a lot myself, I really knew how wrong it was what I did. So that was the point when I subconsciously and in my mind lost all the power. And this is the ultimate trap when you're involved in a relationship that is turning out to be toxic. Because at the end of the day, all those arguments before at the very early stage and all this stuff was showing that there was an attempt. So after I was charmed, after I was hooked, there's this typical thing that narcissists or people with borderline personality disorder, which both things work hand in hand very often, will do is they'll try to undermine you. They'll they will talk bad about you, as in it doesn't have to be in front of others. It's even worse when it's happening at home. So let's say my work was definitely like, what are you even doing there? You're just typing on the keyboard for a few hours a day and you make the money. Yeah, well, I had to spend a lot of years, a lot of hard work, and a lot of learning to actually get to that point. So of course, yeah, I had a good job. Um, it was a lot of undermining of also my lifestyle, my friends, kind of things. Not so much like the points where we actually agreed on, but it was more the things where I was just constantly judged for a lot of stuff. But on the other hand, when you look at, you know, I don't mind being judged when if you have a better example to show and you are someone I can really look up to, then I guess I'll judge myself by that. Um, but when you start to realize that people's actions and words are not always aligned, like they can contradict themselves. They're not really on the same page with themselves. That's what started to you know bother me, and I started to notice that this is really something that I wasn't happy with. But and then yeah, before I get to the point of the what really binds you into a relationship with a person like that. So one of the biggest signs that you should really just tell the person to pack and leave, or if that's not possible, walk away yourself for whatever the cost, is when your own love, when your own feelings and emotions for that person start being tested. And I don't mean you. let's say that if you had traumatic experience before in life, you may have the right to question some things, but please, not by any means so that you manipulate a person and trigger them into the stuff I'm going to talk right now. So what happened was we both found out that we really like live jazz. Good, perfect date. So we go we find this really cute jazz club. We loved going there, and one of the nights we go there, and this dude, tall Dutch guy, not even good looking or whatever, but just extremely like a proper predator and a very vulgar guy. And I mean vulgar in a sense of his attitude and non-verbal language more than anything else, because he was acting as a gentleman when it comes to his choice of words. So this guy pops in, and for the lack of the better words, he immediately starts drooling all over her. And as an act of true gentleman, I guess, that night, I did not, I responded to him with a smile and nodding and just chuckling away at his stupid sexist jokes. Then there was also a moment where I went to the men's toilet, and he followed, said some stuff that I would have never even dared to imagine to say to someone who's on a date, clearly on a date, and he knew it. But yeah, um, I didn't notice anything else at that point. For me, the evening was kind of like, yeah, a little bit ruined by his presence, but that's it. We leave, we go, and the whole matter is forgotten within minutes, I guess, or at least the next day. But a couple of weeks later, we go to the same jazz club, kind of like it became our thing. We sit there, and in a short time after that, this guy appears again. Um, and then I decided, okay, maybe last time I wasn't really clear enough about my boundaries and the fact that I felt really bad in that situation. So I invited him to the table. I said I'll buy some drinks, but with an intention to talk a little bit about the past situation. So I did explain in a short time that I felt really uncomfortable with the way he was all over my girlfriend, and that he was clearly more than flirting with her and all this stuff. So, that I'd appreciate that this evening he behaves respectful to the fact that we're here on a date and it's our date, not his. So the guy apologizes, says that he understands and stuff, and for a little while he was actually okay. Suddenly a song comes on, which I don't really often feel like I'm gonna grab the girl that I'm with and go and dance, but that moment I really felt like it. Funny enough, at the same moment, he grabs her hand and drags her to a very narrow place that's kind of like a dance floor, and they start dancing. Um, what can I say? That dance was not, from the way he was dancing, that was really unacceptable. So I rolled myself a cigarette, went outside, smoked the cigarette, realized that she's not following me. Um, Went back inside, and I told her, look, you have a choice. You live with me or you stay with this guy. But if you stay with this guy, you also leave the flat. Um, and this dude, unfortunately, steps in between us and thinks that I am being the aggressor here. So he starts defending her. The whole thing ended up with him and a broken nose, no charges against me and stuff. He actually got banned from the club, and I became a very popular guest around there because apparently he was harassing other ladies regularly in that place. So nobody really liked him, and they were happy about what happened. However, the funny part of this story comes later, a couple of days, because I noticed that she keeps getting messages, and it turns out it was this guy. So she tells me that on the first time when we bumped into him, they exchanged the numbers, which to me was actually very shocking and surprising because at that point we were kind of like in a relationship that was not really agreed to be open anymore so much. Okay, so turns out she's messaging with him. He is trying to manipulate her into thinking that I'm the crazy guy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, maybe I am crazy, who gives a shit? But the point is, I was just madly in love with her. Madly in love, really. No, not ever before in my life like that. So we discuss it for the next few days. It was a bit, you know, it wasn't so argumentative as far as I remember, but it was still a bit unpleasant. And then after a few days of all that, she finally comes clean with the fact that on this second date, what happened was that when we decided to go, she knew what time we would arrive there because it was always the same time. To find a free table, you had to arrive early. So we arrived there. What she admitted and told me later on was that she sent him a message, not that we are going to be there, but that she is going to be there. And she later, much later, so this was what she admitted to me then, that it was her who invited him. And that really upset me because I didn't understand and I didn't know at that moment that this was actually done on purpose. Quite some time later in our relationship, she would finally admit and tell me that this was done on purpose because she wasn't really sure that my feelings for her were real and that I feel anything and stuff. To me, this alone became a huge red flag. And from that point on, I think I started doing kind of the same. I mean, I lowered my standards, I lowered my guard, and I definitely forgot about my boundaries at that point. And I kind of acted like a dick. And that was the issue because I felt justified because of what she's done. Not just that guy, of course, it was more than that, but I mean, there's more stories and more stuff what happened on later, but just to say why I felt justified in my reactions, in my anger with her and all this stuff. And that was wrong, like it's not, never mind whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuses, or whatever it is, it's just wrong to think that because you're hurt that you have the right to hurt another person in any kind of form. It's just completely wrong. So yeah, when slowly and slowly through our relationship she started admitting things that she's done, and a lot of them were very manipulative and very hard. There was a point, let's say before she got pregnant, that I packed my bags and left. So that point with that guy, I should have listened to myself. If she hasn't followed out of the jazz club, not even not when I just lit up a cigarette, but when I smacked that guy and she still stayed with him, feeling sorry for him. I mean, let's just be honest. That guy was an extreme pervert. That's just in a way that you do not behave when someone is on a date. It's extremely unacceptable. And when I explained the story to anyone, even the people here who live here, so that means there's a maybe a cultural situation here. No, they all said that if they were there with us, they would have probably they would be the ones to stick up for me. So what I learned from all this was that those moments when I felt really pissed off, like that's it, that should have been it. The biggest pain and suffering that was caused in all this was actually done by myself. Because once she got, so after this huge incident and argument that we had on our trip to visit her family and sister in Lithuania, there was something. I'm not even gonna go into the details of that story anymore, but just to paint the picture, I was really embarrassed, but this time in a public space in front of people that I didn't know, and it was extreme embarrassment, totally unnecessary, because there was no trigger for whatever happened from my side at all. And I must even say that actually the the point that I got really upset with her and hit her was definitely after this event. So when these things happened, I knew I should have been leaving. Shortly after that, so shortly, that's maybe, now I don't really remember exactly, but just a few months after this, some time after this incident that we had when I was arrested and charged, she got pregnant. Yeah. And as I'm a dad already. Kids are great. I was happy about that. But fact is, and I also kind of never told her until the end of the relationship, that one thing I was never really honest with her, apart from trying to hide the smoking. So because that was my avoiding part of the avoiding type of personality. If I get into too many arguments and there's nothing I can do, I'm going to try to avoid the arguments themselves. That didn't work, of course. It made things worse. But apart from trying to hide the smoking, I never honestly told her how I felt that moment when she told me that she's pregnant. That moment for me was scary, really scary, because I understood already what she was capable of and how she's like and how often. And I knew that I'm not the right person, at least not equipped with the knowledge and ability, strength to get out of this. Yes, that's how I believed at that moment and what I thought. So there you go. I felt trapped. Now I know that these traps were everything, every trap, cage, and limitation we create it for ourselves in our minds. Let's say, even from the first experience, even though it's hard, separation after a child is there or when the child is there, you know, if things don't get better and the other person refuses to actually work on themselves, and the deeper the issues, the harder the work, then really, unfortunately, there is no better solution than leaving, even if it's just temporary. Because sometimes people need to learn what they have through losing it. So, yeah, from that point on, especially when, like, this was the peak of my life actually, in terms of the money. I had an easy job. We could travel. I could actually take the laptop with me and work from anywhere. And I got paid quite well. So we had a plan to go and settle in Lithuania, get a house there, and just live a life. Might have worked, who knows? But unfortunately, at the point when we were actually moving, the company that was hiring me for work went into financial trouble and they had to sack all the freelancers over a night without any notice, without any compensation. So, yep, after quite a good run of a few years, I landed on my butt just as we moved to Lithuania. So it wasn't nice, but at the end of the day, I really managed, I still managed to get us through. It wasn't easy. We had a couple of months. We had a couple of months when there wasn't enough money. I also screwed up. I was trying to. We had a little savings. I was trying to actually stupidly double that up on an opportunity, and turned out to be a scam. I got burned, and then yeah, basically had to go and quickly find enough work, which was kind of okay. There was some work, but it wasn't really well paid. It was enough to get by. However, let's say within a year of living there, I got another opportunity back in Netherlands, which was definitely the best paid opportunity ever. So, given that we have been through that phase of kind of poverty together, um, and it was tough, I ignored a lot of the issues, like the postpartum depression, or general characteristics that turned out sooner or later to be the core of her personality, unfortunately. So it was, for me, it was all about focus on the family, getting stuff done, sort the problems out, find solutions, and get us out of there. And I did. I went to Netherlands first, so I was alone here for a few weeks, then sleeping basically almost on the floor, with a couple of Siamese cats who had severe digestion issues, and I had to clean up their poop almost on a daily basis. But yeah, I was here working, learning for a new job. Figured out it's really challenging. I was scared because this was a really, really big step up in my career. Um, so yeah, but within short time, we found a flat. They came, they followed me, and that was it. We came back here to Netherlands, and I thought now that financially we were definitely sorted. The problems would slowly start to go away, but it didn't. So as time went by, it was just getting worse and worse. And to my own contribution, like I said, my reactions, my anger, and all of that stuff, at some point I really behaved a lot of the same. So it's like a mirror projection when you start, your partner gets angry at you, whether it's for a good reason or not, you start getting back and you want to have your say, your truth, your justice. You try to stand up for yourself, and that's it. But when you're faced with for the person with such I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, it's really narcissism and the borderline personality. It's just impossible to talk because they will twist your words. They'll misremember stuff, how it went, what they said, who said what. Or if you say something, there's like a big context, but there's one word that triggers them. They will be picking on that word and then screw everything else. It's not important. This was all the fact that you were basically talking, let's say, about your feelings, but um, if you said something bad about them throughout that context, they would blame you for this and stuff. So it's really just it's a never-ending cycle of being blamed and or they guilt trip themselves and it's la la la. And at the end of the day, you're kind of asking yourself like, why is all of this going on? Like what's the matter here? Because at some point I stopped hiding everything. I realized, okay, fine. Look, if I'm hiding smoking, if I'm doing this, we keep fighting. So boom, there you go. Everything out in the open. I'm honest. I'm sincere about everything. You see me for who I am, and then let's go from here again. We even, in the meantime, because we had, like all these arguments, um, the no, the neighbors called at that point when we were in this big house, and it was also 2020. It was not easy. Um, the neighbors actually had to call the police because I know I made my decision. I'm never gonna go to jail for anyone. Yeah. So the neighbors called the police. I was also visibly hurt. Um, she had some marks here and here from the point that what can I say? If you're getting if stuff is being thrown in your head and your head is actually also being slammed against the doors and stuff. I am strong. I do know how to defend myself, but I did not harm her. Yeah. However, I was the one that again got taken away and all this kind of stuff. Social services and things got involved. And from that point on, it became a very, very long story of kind of, for me, it became clear that all I have to do is try to survive this without paying any further price. But it didn't work. So even though we started therapies and all this stuff, which kind of seemed good, but the difference was that if I find that I can trust the expert, the therapist, I have really nothing to hide. Nothing about my past, nothing about my darkness, and all this kind of stuff. And I honestly believed it would be the same on both sides. Now, turns out it wasn't. Um, I actually feel so sorry for the therapist that was dealing with both of us and then consequently dealing with her because kind of must suck that you're a professional and realizing at the end of the day that you got really manipulated. Um, but yeah, because what it really took for things to break up was when I went to Germany, well, Germany, working with the German partner on a week-long event. It was 16. Work was literally 16 hours a day. I mean, there were breaks and stuff, but you are on your feet 16 hours a day. It's very exhausting. Um, the overall unprofessional equipment and conditions, and then not to mention the behavior of that guy I was working with was so extreme that I just couldn't believe myself. And I couldn't believe it's even real. But the worst part came when I came back because that guy refused to pay me immediately while we were supposed to be celebrating our anniversary. But intuitively, I felt that something was going to blow up. I mean, I just felt real bad coldness and tension and all this stuff. But the point is, things that happened before all that were also involving her erotically close girlfriends and stuff and breaking some promises. I mean, I was simply getting to the point when I realized that I'm getting played, I'm being a fool, even though we kind of agreed it would be an open relationship. She's allowed to explore herself and her sexuality and figure out her life. And if it turns out she likes women more than men, go ahead. I mean, be happy, love whoever you love more. I don't care. That was really not important. I'm definitely not possessive. But you see that you're being manipulated whenever it comes to the point that you would wanna, let's say, just consider having your privilege in your open relationship. No. And it was always the same, if she was doing for herself whatever she wanted, myself even doing things such as just having a totally innocent lunch with another girl, I would be facing an extreme amount of jealousy. So all these red flags and stuff, it was just unacceptable. And I hope that even if she's watching, if you are watching, I hope that one day you realize that how unacceptable it is to be so, the words are used very often in arguments, to be so double standard, to be so contradicting and so double faced. Well, ultimately, the biggest hit and the biggest disappointment came from realizing that, yeah, in terms of who lied, how long, and about things that were really important, turns out it was her. And it took her 5 years to actually come clean about some of the really important stuff. And I was devastated. And this was all after the breakup. Because, during the breakup and all this, I still hoped. We have three beautiful kids. We have been through a lot together. So it's the investment into this, especially with the therapies and all this stuff, was huge. It was extremely hard to let go of all this, even now knowing that I'm dealing with a really dangerous and toxic person. So, yeah, the biggest damage I could have done to myself was not alcohol or smoking and stuff, but it was actually living with all that, knowing what I'm doing to myself, crying so many times, feeling like, what have I done? How to get out? Not feeling totally helpless, stupid, foolish. Um, and then a few people even elaborated it themselves for me, like a total loser. I mean, she was one of them that said it most often. And it started to reflect so much that there were a few other people who said exactly the same, and it just hit hard. Knowing myself, my past, and what I've done, these people calling me a loser was the biggest joke of my life, but a really nasty one. The joke that I pulled on myself with my life. So yeah, lessons: keep the boundaries. Just because you're kind, it doesn't mean you have to stay so nice that you lose yourself in all of this. And tell people clearly when they've crossed the line, maybe too far or a few times too many. Tell them clearly that they have no space in your life. It's really important to put yourself first, regardless of how much you need someone to talk or some love or whatever it is. I know, because I had none of that in my childhood, and I was so happy to finally find someone like that. Someone I could really talk to all night long about all sorts of things. Spend time doing almost anything. But there's a lot more than love. Love is not everything that's needed for a successful relationship. It's also good communication. It's also knowing that arguments and disagreements are also part of communication and relationship, but how you address them and how you solve them is way more important. And then ultimately, yes, what kind of goals are you going to have? So if you are going to build the future together, build it with someone who you don't need to ask to bring their stuff to the table. They're going to bring it without asking. They're going to do whatever it takes to support you, and you're just going to automatically support them because that's what love is all about. And yeah, if you don't find anyone else to talk to and be with them and love you, you're good enough yourself, really. Obviously, of course, it's nothing wrong if you go and get some help, you go and get a therapy or whatever, or find some support groups and stuff, but it's, I don't know, for self-healing it's not that important, in my opinion. Of course, it's much easier when you're not lonely. It's a lot easier also when you can hug someone and be close and all this stuff. We all need this. We're all human beings. We all need to be close to someone. It's scientifically proven how good it is for all of us, and it's scientifically proven how loneliness is very destructive to someone's health. So it's but it's really important to put yourself first, not in a sense of thinking how thinking that you need to be admired, that you need to be validated and, I don't know, overvalued at any cost, but put yourself first, at least in a sense. Well, at least when it comes to anyone crossing your boundaries, you have to put yourself first. You wouldn't allow people and strangers on the street to talk shit to you. Don't allow it at home. And especially don't allow it to yourself. You know, yes, I do think I was acting like an idiot, very irresponsible, and to a certain extent reflect, yeah, reflecting and deflecting back responsibility to another person when it was actually my own. In many ways, she was right what she said, but you know, it's not about what you say, it's what you do that matters more. And yeah, ultimately, the biggest lesson I have is like, we are the ones responsible for everything that happens to us and how it's going to go next and all of this stuff. This is the lesson, the biggest one. But also, the most important part here is, do not allow yourself to be hurt. You don't have to. I mean, never mind what you've done, something in the past, whether you've done something bad and stuff. If you're here and now, you're not in some jail because of the stuff you've done, then you've already cleared your sentence, so to speak. You're free. That means ultimately you have the freedom to decide and to make a choice. And the choice has to be to not hurt yourself, because that's what I did. Allowing a person to come into my life and then literally take a dump on it anytime she or anyone would like to, it's not acceptable. So don't accept it. Don't take it. Either show them the door or walk out the door. That is 100% the best solution. Sorry for the long video, sorry for a lot of details, but that's how it is. Life is full of surprises, full of everything. I hope you did enjoy something. Please leave me a comment what you liked, what you didn't. I hope that this helps anyone, because ultimately what I really wish to do in life is help a lot of people to be free, to be themselves, and have a happy life, of course. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing and liking. Peace out.